Okay, well, thank you everyone. Nassim, can you everyone hear me? Okay. Nassim, it's such a privilege to have you here and have some of your time, your very limited time. So I don't know how to maximize this time to ask you all the things that I would like to ask you. So hopefully I'll start with something and we'll have a conversation from there.
Yeah.
But I think one of the things I would like to ask you...
There's no stupid questions. There's just stupid answers. So I'll try not to give too many of those.
Okay. So let me ask you something very straight.
Uh-oh.
What is reality?
Start with the easy stuff.
Yeah.
Right.
It's an easy question.
Okay.
3 words. What is reality?
I think reality is... I mean, if we mean reality in terms of like the stuff around us, I think reality is fundamental dynamics of space-time. It's a flow. It's fluid dynamics of space-time in action. It's everything seems solid and kind of frozen, but actually it's very dynamic. And it's because of scale relationship. Just like everything seems stable when we're like here in the room, right? But we're flying through space at like thousands and thousands of miles per second. And we have no idea, right? So it seems, chill, right? But same thing when we look at atoms and we look at the material world and all this, it actually... It's not little billiard ball, It's actually dynamics. It's field interaction. It's like the structure of space in a dense, condensed energy state, and we call it matter, right? So actually, I think it's better to think of reality as like fluid dynamics. The flow of space-time, the dynamics of space-time, and we're made out of that. And so it's actually, we're kind of like an expression of this flow. And I really, it's not only a flow dynamics, but it's a flow dynamics that is entangled, meaning it's like everything is talking to everything. It's like the music of the spheres, like it's singing, like the creation is singing to you, and you're singing back to creation, and this feedback is what I believe we call consciousness.
Consciousness. Now, we went from reality to consciousness.
Yeah, okay. Well, because...
Okay,
because we experience reality, so there's an experiencer somewhere. When you say reality, it's somebody experiencing it, right?
Right.
So you can't really remove consciousness. This is why physics is in such a pickle right now.
So this is, we're starting strong.
Yes. Well, it was a strong question.
It took you like 30 seconds to blow my mind away. Okay, I'll try to follow up. Okay, so you're saying, essentially what I'm hearing is there is no reality without consciousness. Right? You need consciousness for reality to exist. No,
I'm not saying that. I'm saying I think whatever you want to describe as reality, I don't think the physical world needs a human being, right? It depends how you define consciousness.
Right.
So if consciousness is like some proto-energy field that's not concentrated in a human being alone, then I would agree, yeah.
Yes.
And so, the way I see it, like I have this tendency to want to unify everything and remove, the separation we make between things. Like this is my tendency. So, we tend to put things in a box. Oh, there's the material world, and then there's a consciousness world, and then there's a spiritual world, and, all these things. And I tend to think of it as one thing, right? So if you ask me, was there consciousness first and then the material world, or was there a material world and then consciousness? I can't. The only thing I can tell you is that it's a feedback between the two. I think that there's one cannot exist without the other. So actually, the two are one thing. And you know, so you can think of the material world as expressing consciousness, and you can think of consciousness expressing the material world, because it's a feedback, and one cannot exist without the other. That's where I'm coming from, and that's where the equations that I'm writing are leading to.
Okay.
Yeah.
Where do you get all these crazy ideas from?
I was born that way.
That's what I wanted to get. I've always had this impression that the best ideas don't come up when you are thinking. They're not the result of cognitive thinking. Is this how you experience these eureka moments when you have your best ideas? Think of the best ideas you've ever had. Did they come up while you were thinking about something, or they just came up like a spark of light unexpectedly?
Yeah, they didn't. The thinking part comes after the inspiration part, you know, the intuition part, the sensation of tapping into like a truth. And then the thinking part comes after. It's like, okay, how is that true? And how does it relate to all the rest of the stuff? And can I write an equation for that? And is that equation going to give the right answer? All that comes after. But
Wow.
But the truth is a sensation. It's a sensation, and bigger the truth, bigger the sensation. And bigger the sensation, more transformative it is to my consciousness.
You're getting into super interesting topic here, because that's something I was experiencing. Of course, my great ideas are nothing like yours, but whenever I experience that I have a great idea, it's not something that comes after a cognitive process.
Right.
And what you're saying now relates to that. You're saying that your biggest ideas come, you don't know where from, not as a result of a cognitive process. It's basically, you actually mentioned tapping into the truth.
Yeah.
Like if there was a field of truth, and you are somehow tapping, connecting with your brain into that source,
right,
whatever it is.
Yeah.
And then you try to transform that truth into mathematical formula that explain what your intuition is telling you. Is that correct?
Yeah, I always say, you know, when maybe I shouldn't say this publicly, but
Go ahead.
I always say, you know, I'm not a physicist. I'm a mystic that writes physics, because I have to translate it so that people understand what I'm experiencing.
I love that.
And I think everybody's a mystic. I think everybody's a genius. You know, and we breed out geniuses by educating them in a very harmful way to this instinctive experience. If you look in history, all the greatest discovery and all the greatest people that have made this discovery, they often made statements that, you know, it came to them in like moments of, you know, deep kind of meditative state, or in the bus looking at buildings go by, or, you know, like and this is one of the problem in physics at this point, is that the idea that you can just write math and figure out the universe just by writing math is the wrong way around. This is why philosophy was fundamental to physics long before math was, because it has to be like a concept, a thought, an experience, and then you can go and write. Otherwise, you can write math that tells you that the universe is in 26 dimensions, and that like you can, you know, like you can just hallucinate math all day long. and it's not gonna lead you to anywhere unless you have a model that you're building from, which comes from an instinctive notion and a connection to this fundamental field. I really believe that actually in a society that's evolved, you don't have laws, because a child knows when it's doing something wrong, right? So how do we know? Well, because there's a relationship to the world, there's a relationship to the field, and that is like kind of cut off when we go into the educational system, and we're taught, don't believe your feelings, don't believe your instinct, believe what we tell you. And and what we tell you is the truth, and if you actually come up with a different truth, that's wrong.
That's a very interesting point. In a way, the school is teaching you to forget who you really are.
Right.
So when you say their laws are not necessary, to me there's just one law, which is the law of resonance, right? If we're energy, vibrating energy, and we're resonating, automatically everything is fully aligned. The universe doesn't need laws, right?
Yeah. And in business, that's how it is, isn't it? Like people feel, and like good business people, they feel their way through and make correct
business.
decisions.
We have other problems.
Yeah.
But in fact, you're right? I think that what you were saying before, this idea that we don't need laws. Now it sounds crazy to say that we don't need laws, right? But we don't need laws because we've created a world that needs laws.
Right.
That now if we remove them, we're in trouble, right?
Right.
But I mean, if we just acted out of love all the time, love was our main law, and we only did things that we resonated with, everything would be fine. It's impossible to go wrong. The universe doesn't go wrong.
Yeah, well, no child is born serial killer, But after enough trauma in a child's life, you might make a serial killer out of it,
So as I was saying, basically the school today, and especially business schools, they teach you to forget this basic principle. They create a mindset as to how things should be. They create a set of rules, business rules, and we tend to go by the manual. So when you were saying good businessmen don't follow the manual, I don't know if I was a good businessman, but I know I was lucky enough to not study business before creating my company.
Well, that's what I was going to say. It's like most great, successful businessmen actually are high school dropouts and, people that didn't necessarily
just follow their intuition.
Yeah, they
Exactly.
followed their intuition.
So exactly, that's what I've experienced myself. When you go by your intuition, you feel that you are all the time doing things that people say are counterintuitive. In fact, they are intuitive, but they're against the book, right?
Yeah, I mean, this is why Einstein said imagination is more important than facts.
Right.
Right, because if information, if you're getting information, like people think of imagination as this invalid thing, or you're just having imagination. But actually, this is where you form the most fundamental, thoughts of, and from there you act in the world. Like it's not a trivial thing. Like instinct is not a trivial thing. When you have a gut feeling, good to follow it. I don't anymore because I live in France and it's not possible anymore. But I used to drive cars at extreme speed all over the place, because I like going fast. Approaching the speed of light, even if it's just a fraction,
Feeling like a particle in an accelerator or something.
Yes, exactly. Like a free electron. And this is, and this is how, I relax when I'm going, 300 kilometers an hour. I relax.
I like to ask your passenger.
You get into this warp zone where everything slows down, and it's like the zone, right? I love this, and that's why I was like into skiing as a professional for many years. And anyway, so how many times do you get a gut feeling that there's a cop down the road and you're going to get a ticket? And how many times do you listen to it, right? And if you don't, you get the ticket. I mean, so many times, right? And it's like, okay, you know, and you might say, okay, well, that sounds woo-woo, right? It does. It sounds like, oh, fuck, what is he talking about? I thought he was a physicist, right? Actually, there is very good, rigorous physics that can explain these things. It's just that these physics have not been understood, right? I always say, like, spiritual notions are really physics that haven't been understood. And that's really, like, I don't mean this in a really disconnected, ungrounded way. I guarantee you. I'm doing this after 35 years of writing equations. So it's not like I'm saying this with no ground to say it, or I'm saying it only in terms of, like, philosophy. I'm saying this because there's lots of evidence, and I have it right here, actually, you know, all the equations, that the world we live in is interconnected through a field of information, this fundamental field that I didn't need to invent it. It was already there in the physics. It's in quantum theory. It's called zero-point energy. It was called that way by Max Planck, and people get this all mixed up. Even physicists, I mean, in this paper, I had to write actually like a multiple paragraph going through the equations of quantum mechanics to re-demonstrate, you know, that this fundamental field that was found by Max Planck is not something you can just, currently in quantum physics, they just zero it out. You know, they just say, oh, you can cancel it out. Just happens to be a field of infinite amount of energy, right? Now, you know, Paul Dirac said, when he looked at this, you know, he said, I'm happy to, like, ignore a very, you know, an infinitely small value. Like if it's like 0.0000, like, you know, teeny value. But ignoring an infinitely large value is like, you know, he was saying it's not good mathematics, it's not good physics. And so basically, you know, we live in this field, and this field is highly dynamic. Okay, so I'm just going to get technical for just 1 second, but it's highly dynamic at the quantum scale, meaning like at the scale billions of times smaller than the atom. If I grew like a little quantum oscillator so that it was a grain of sand, then the proton, the nuclei of the atom, which is really small. So if I count the number of protons in your body, there's more protons in your body than stars in the universe. Okay? In your body right now. Okay? And so, like, first of all, that gives you an idea of the complexity of your existence right now. But if I grew a Planck to that size of that proton, which is damn small, then the proton diameter would be from here to Alpha Centauri, which is 40 trillion kilometers. So this fluctuation of the Planck field is actually extremely energetic at a scale that's completely foreign to us. Completely, it's like when you're looking at the ocean from an airplane, it looks perfectly smooth and flat and nice and everything. And then you go down towards it and it's like 6-foot waves and it's like hell, you know? It's like that, right? Like if you go down to the Planck, then it's highly energetic. And the energy curves space-time. That's Einstein field equation. And that means that space-time has like, and when you calculate, it curves space-time enough to make wormholes at that scale. And it connects all the points in space. So this field is not just like a fluid dynamic field, but it's actually a field that is interconnected non-linearly. And so because we're made out of this, then all of a sudden we have access to information that's non-local, right? Meaning we can have access to information that there is a cop down the road, right? And that he's got a radar, and you know, if you're going the speed I used to go, you're gonna lose the car and end up in jail, right? It's not gonna be good. So, you know, this is really kind of like important to understand. This is non-trivial. Your consciousness, so explaining consciousness requires more than a local description of neuron firing in the brain. That just doesn't do it. And I think it's much more accurate to think of it as like your body and your brain being an antenna that's tapping into a nonlinear field.
Okay, good. Yeah. Now we're going to get a volunteer from the audience to summarize what he just explained for everyone. Just kidding.
Sorry, I got excited.
We can, I think, I'm very tempted to keep going down this path because I also heard you talk about, when you talk about the protons and so many protons in our body, so many protons in the universe, and at the center of every proton being a black hole.
Yeah.
Okay, let's stop it here, okay? That's too much for us to understand. It's really unbelievable. This level of reality is really too much for our mind. Our mind cannot comprehend that. It goes beyond our understanding.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's hard for us to understand right now because of the description that has been given to black holes. Only because of that. And, you know, I just want to make clear as well that, like, or I know when I say that, people go, oh my God, that is so crazy. It's so outside, you know, the mainstream scientific community. And I just want to say, the guy that started it is Einstein and Rosen. In 1935, they wrote papers trying to describe atomic structure as mini black holes. And so it's not like I'm completely beside the track, right? I'm just finishing what they started. They did the calculation. They made they didn't make an error in the calculation. They didn't reverse the equation. If they would have reversed the equation, they would have found that what they needed was all there. And then, you know, think about it. You have a little particle in the nuclei of the atom that has most of the mass of the atom in it, right? So all the mass we see, mass is energy, right? E equals mc squared. All the mass we see, right, is actually, you know, from this little thing in the middle of the atom. We call it proton, okay? And that little thing has been oscillating since 13.7 billion years ago, right? The so-called Big Bang, if that was a real thing, which I'm not a big fan of. But, you know, assuming the Big Bang, at least 13 point, and there is no evidence that it's doing anything else. Like, it's not decaying, it's not going anywhere, it doesn't seem to be affected. Like,
where's it getting the energy from?
Exactly. Where is it coming from? And that's what I answer in my papers. And really, you know, the idea that black holes are these things that just suck up everything that's around them is actually wrong. It's a fallacy of the way we found the solution to Einstein equation at first was without spin and without charge. And so obviously if you have a singularity or a black hole that's not spinning and has no charge, then everything that's around is going to get sucked in, right? But that's not the reality. Black holes out there have spin and charge, right? But it took till the 1970s till we found those solutions. So we got stuck on the idea that it's some kind of hole that sucks everything in. But if it's spinning very, very fast. And it's, spitting out stuff.
I see.
You see?
Okay.
And that's why I predicted in the 90s, actually in the 80s, that we were going to find black holes in the middle of all galaxies. People told me I was crazy, and we found black holes in the middle of every galaxy. And so if black holes were these monsters that just suck up everything around them, there would be no galaxies, right? Because we haven't found one without a black hole yet.
Okay.
So clearly that's not the case, right?
Yep. I want to decompress a little bit.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Let me go back to some of the ideas you mentioned before.
Let's get back into the Burning Man mode.
Not so much.
Not so much. Okay.
No, when you were talking about intelligence and how the big ideas come to your mind,
yeah,
you made it clear this is not a result of a cognitive process. You're tapping into a source of intelligence, right? Do you have any? At some point, your brain connects with those ideas. Do you have any idea on how this happens, how that is possible, how outside information gets through your brain without using your physical senses or without the result of the brain's own cognitive processes?
Well, yeah, I know. That's a really good question, and I can only answer it from subjective because I haven't done measurements on my brain when it happens. But subjectively, I would say actually not coming from my brain at all.
Okay.
It's coming from my gut. If I was going to place it, my gut, my heart, my whole being, my state of emotion, that is really I have to, typically I'm in a state of emotion of feeling a lot of appreciation, a lot of love for, the universe and everything, and, appreciation for my children, appreciation for everything. And then in that state, I feel connected, and when I feel connected, then it naturally comes to me.
That's interesting. So in a way, vibrating high, and those high emotions, is what generates the connection, right?
Yeah, really, I think so, yeah.
Okay.
If I, for instance, early in the morning, I typically wake up around 5:36, or earlier 5, and I just lay there, and I'm in kind of a state of bliss, and in that state, I usually, can feel my way through the physics and everything that I do.
I guess at a very different level, I've experienced that thing when I wake up. The very first thing when I wake up, and I get into thinking mode, I feel like if my mind was expanded, like if it was a higher mind, bigger than my own mind, and I'm thinking much more clearly. My best ideas come in that state.
Yeah. It's such an important state to cultivate, and there's nothing in our society that encourages it. When I was at school, my father was a child psychologist, and he was work with Piaget and all this, and I was, the worst example of education that you could get, right? Because I was in trouble all the time, and I was his worst nightmare, right? and so basically, I would get school reports. We were in Canada, in Quebec part of Canada, so it was in French, that at least every second one had the word lunatic in it, right? That not in the sense he's crazy, but in the sense that in Quebec, it was described as like being in, not being present to what's going on in class, right? Like being in the vape, right? Like in a complete, like when you're like zoning out. Like basically, it's like basically the report says your son is zoning out most of the time he's here, and we're not able to educate him. And and I would tell my parents, like, well, I'm not interested in what they want to educate me with. I don't think it's valid in many cases. So, but these moments were so critical to me. Like the first time, this is very vivid, the first time I got that space is not empty and it's full of energy and that there's information in the field, I was maybe 8 years old, 9 years old.
8 years old?
Yeah.
Okay.
And I was looking out the window. I will always remember this. I don't talk about it personally. I usually talk about the dimension thing that I did when I was 10. But when I was 8, like I looked outside the window and, they were teaching and I was so uninterested. And so I was like looking outside the window and I was looking at the tree and I was longing to be in the trees and in nature and like be out of this, it was hell for me to be in a school, right? And so, and all I could, like, I felt this connection with the tree. It was beautiful, like old, like big tree. And I had this voice that came in my head that, and I felt like, oh, the space between you and this tree is not empty. You are connected to this tree. The space between you and the tree is not empty, right? And like, it's hard for people to visualize that the field is occurring, but we use devices every day that's like tapping into a field, right? An electromagnetic field that makes it so we can communicate with each other. We don't think about it twice, but this field is in the space right now, right? Like there's radio station, there's microwave, there's infrared, there's all this stuff. There's like background radiation from the galaxy in the field right now, like between us, right? And so, yeah.
So, well, I'm glad nobody took you to the psychiatrist when you said
They did. They did. Yeah.
Okay.
They did.
Well.
Yeah. And that was painful.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I think this connection you made when you were small.
Luckily, they didn't have drugs at the time to give to children.
You were lucky. You were lucky.
Yeah. I'm glad.
I think the connection, the type of connection you described when you sense that there's truth, knowledge, deeper knowledge than the one that's already in your brain,
right,
coming to you somehow and you don't understand how. I think that having that ability is the source of intelligence. The real intelligence has to do with being able to do that.
Yeah, there's another part to intelligence, is to be able to follow through.
To
follow through. Meaning when you hear the voice, slow down, because you're going to get the ticket.
Okay.
But if you ignore the voice, right, then you will lead your life and you might get the insight that is the most important insight in the history of humanity, but you learn to ignore them. You ignored it, right?
Yeah.
So
that's what they teach us at school, really. To go by the book and forget about everything else. Eventually, we just learn to ignore those insights, and we don't feel them anymore. And reconnecting with that is
critical.
A very wise man told me once that I asked him whether artificial intelligence could become conscious, or match human intelligence, or go even beyond. And basically the answer was, according to him, and he was a very wise man, that what we call our cognitive intelligence is not intelligence, essentially, right? So, cognitive intelligence is basically a way to process existing information. You can process information and you can display that information in multiple forms, maybe forms that you hadn't seen before, but you're not generating new knowledge from existing information. That's
Right.
the information we have.
Yeah, you're
And
just
you can,
remixing what's
right,
already known.
Right. And real intelligence happens when you access higher levels of knowledge.
Of awareness.
And that's when you, and that's what the brain can do.
Yeah.
Besides using cognitive processes, but those cognitive processes have nothing to do with real intelligence. Real intelligence has to do with accessing higher layers
Yeah. And
of knowledge.
And it's the brain and the emotional state. You know, the emotional state is critical to turn on that part of your awareness capability.
One question regarding all this. What I think before at the beginning you've talked about transformation, right? What is transformation for you? What do you understand as transformation? Because everybody here wants, I think everybody here would agree with the idea that it would be nice to transform the world into a better place, right?
Yeah.
But what does that mean? What is transformation to you deep down? I have an idea, I'll share it with you later, but I wanted to hear you first.
I think transformation is really kind of happening continuously. Like everything you do, every moment of your life, you're actually transforming. You're transforming everything around you. You're transforming yourself. You transcend. Like that, it's like a transformation is just a state of natural being for the universe. And I think that when like you reach thresholds, I think, you know, another part of intelligence that like people say, oh, you're a genius. I'm like, everybody's a genius. What do you mean? The only difference is that like when I find something, I'm like a dog with a bone, you know? I'm not gonna let go. Like that must be my Italian blood or something. But like I just, you know, I'm not gonna let go. I focus, you know, like, and I will continue to focus for like decades, you know. Oh, I'm gonna solve physics, right? And until I find, you know, and that is the transformative state, you know, like being able to like actually like bring everything in to a very sharp focus and then, you know, apply that until the step has been made, right?
Okay.
And I think that's why, you know, some people, you know, use psychedelics and all this because they're transformative moments in their life. And it gives them a sense of what can be achieved. But then it needs to be achieved naturally from your body, you know? So, yeah.
Let me share with you
Yeah.
my own experience with this. What I've experienced myself is that, you know, I've always had this natural impulse to be a, you know, first of all, help others, help transform the world, get the world a better place. But I at some point I realized that I couldn't transform myself, so it was hard to transform the others if I couldn't begin with myself. So I said, okay, maybe I need to begin with myself. And then I spent quite a while trying to change my way of doing things, my behavior, and the ways I was reacting when faced with certain situations.
Yeah.
And I found that I could, you know, with enough effort, I could make some changes.
Yeah, with some focus.
But I would, after some time, would always go back to the former behavior. So changing my behavior was super difficult, super difficult, super hard, no matter how I tried. Sometimes I had small successes, then I would go back, and I was wondering why. What I realized, and that's also part of what this wise man told me, is that what we call transformation has to do with exchange in external behavior, whether individual or collective, right? But that's not transformation itself. Transformation, or actually, this is the result of the actual transformation. And this actual transformation happens at a deeper level that has to do with your belief system, with your knowledge system, because your brain is all the time trying to be consistent between what you believe and what you do. So if you believe this, you'll do this. If you try to do this without changing this, if you try to change this without changing this, what happens is that, it takes effort because you're going against your beliefs. And eventually, it will come back saying, hey, this is stupid, okay? And it will come with plenty of examples to show you that what you're doing makes no sense, right?
Because you didn't change the cause.
Because you didn't change this, right? Exactly.
Yeah.
So what I've realized is that these moments of transformation that you've been talking about, it could be psychedelics or experiences, any kind of experience that you go through that allows you to learn something that displaces an old form of knowledge with a higher form, let's say a deeper form of knowledge, something that's closer to truth, right? Then all of a sudden, you believe something that's not consistent with something else. If you really integrate this, that old knowledge goes away, and then your behavior changes automatically with no effort. And that's the incredible thing. When I found myself reacting in different ways under certain situations without effort, I was like, what's going on with me now? What's happening? And then I started realizing that all had to do with new knowledge that had replaced old knowledge. And what I also found was that the most transformative type of knowledge that I could acquire had to do with an understanding about who you are. Because there's a lot of things.
The deeper truth about
right.
your existence.
When you start getting closer and closer to the truth of reality, probably we're doing baby steps, but each of these baby steps mean a lot in terms of how you feel internally and how you behave externally. And I was wondering, in your case, you've been doing this all of your life. You've been investigating reality, and have you noticed a difference between the Nassim when you were a small kid, and you started going down this path, and now have you felt that beyond your knowledge, which has obviously increased, all these discoveries, how has that impacted your life?
Oh, like very fundamentally. Like I have a hard time relating to Nassim in the ski industry to Nassim now, It's changed me very fundamentally. I still have behaviors that I would love to like improve on. It never stops, right? It's always great improvements possibility. But I definitely have transformed quite fundamental. At the same time, there's like this kid that is still there, that's still like pure, and it's like almost like going back to this sense of like deep belonging with the natural world, and so in some ways it's like a long journey to come back to something that was so present and simple as like early life, in some ways. And so I think it really has transformed me throughout this journey. It really did. And I'm hoping I'm getting better. And I still hurt a lot. I still hurt a lot. I hurt mostly for like looking at humanity and being shunned from certain sections of humanity and having a difficulty bringing what I want to bring to humanity, what I'm offering humanity, for reasons that are unclear right? And so like I'm constantly monitoring my internal state to find ways to like defeat the old patterns of feeling unworthy, feeling that when I was 11 I was suicidal, very early on, and lucky my mother caught on to it, because I told her I was gonna jump out a window, and she didn't. She was desperate to find a solution, and one of the solutions she found is that she got me to learn to meditate, and I learned to meditate and all this, but I know that there's this despair that's still there, that and because when I look at the enormity of trying to bring to the world the idea that, like, the atomic structure is made of singularities that like have infinite connectivity to the rest of the universe and all this, and I'm thinking, for me, in my bubble, in my world, it's like, yeah, of course, everybody knows that, right? When you're discussing this with a physicist, it's like, what? Where are you going? It's good that now I have the equations. Okay, well, here's the math, but there's a sense in me. I'm being kind of like really honest and, like vulnerable. Mm-hmm. There's a sense in me of despair, that like, oh my God, like, I want to see this in the world before I leave this world. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And I'm sure that science has a lot to do for the world, not just in the sense that we interpret the role of science in this society. I think that one of the biggest roles of science, in particular physics, if they can get us to a closer understanding of who we really are, that will be incredibly transformative. I can imagine a world where everybody knows that we are something beyond what we currently believe we are. When everybody understands that, everybody aligned and fully understanding in a fully integrated way, that a lot of things fall apart, a lot of ways of behaving today fall apart. I know that we have like 10 more minutes to go, and I also want to give an opportunity to the audience to make questions. So we have a bunch of questions here from the audience. I'm going to read them randomly, and let's see how many we can cover.
Okay.
So let's start with the first one. How do you balance the pragmatic action of the business world with the surrender required by the path of consciousness? Okay. That's for me. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, you're also a businessman, but let me answer this one. Okay. How do you balance the pragmatic action of the business world with the surrender required by the path of consciousness? Good question. First of all, I'm not a business person anymore, so I don't have to be concerned with that. But how did I used to do it? I would say that there was one thing that made the click in my case, which was when I realized I didn't know anything about business, about how to run a business. I was doing it out of intuition. That ended up or put us in a situation where we became world leaders in what we were doing, and at the same time we're the best place to work in Spain, or amongst the top 3 best places to work in Spain. And at that point we realized that the culture was the key to our success. The way we were treating our employees, our customers, everybody, that was the key. It was not that we were technologically so advanced or anything. We were good, but the fundamental key to our success was the culture. Understanding that got us in a path that actually closed this gap between pragmatism and being conscious, because we realized that business success was directly connected with being a conscious company. That took us to really invest in culture. We started working on it. We identified seriously our values. We worked extensively on our purpose. We identified that we had a higher purpose that went beyond the purpose of the business. The purpose of the company was to actually create happy workplaces. That's what made us happy. We were enjoying creating happy workplaces. And that's why people were happy and giving and treating well their customers, etc. So that created a virtuous circle between what we were doing, the way we were doing it, and the results of the company. So it was great. We understood that our purpose was not making money, but the money we were making was the fuel of our purpose.
Right.
And it was a virtuous circle. And that's how we closed that gap.
Yeah,
So,
feedback.
Yeah.
Amazing. Amazing. Higher purpose.
Yeah, our higher purpose. We had two purposes. One was business purpose.
Yeah.
But the other one was the real reason why we were, the role we played in our society had to do with that. So that was really fascinating for us.
Yeah, I see a lot of business people coming into higher, wanting to have a higher impact and higher, transformative capacity in the world and positive impact in the world, and I see a lot of that. And there's a mix, that happens, I notice, where the intent is there. However, because the structure of society with the lawyers and everything else is set up in a certain way, it's really difficult for them to actually do what they want to do, which is do good in the world and support transformative businesses and all this. And so it's a very big challenge.
What I notice many times, and a lot of people comes to me sometimes asking the same question, is what I notice is that a lot of people have a very good intention, and let's say this would be their ideal path, okay, if they were true to their hearts.
Yeah.
But this is what they do. They have to make a decision that deviates them a little bit from here. And they're, okay, well, it's just this thing. Let's do it. And then a few days later, another little decision. And all of a sudden, they go like this. And when they're here, they're like, okay, what do we need to do to go back?
Right.
Once you've gone down for years in the wrong direction, getting back on track is so difficult.
It's so difficult.
It is still possible, but not so easy. Let's get another one.
Okay.
What is the true value of knowledge? Accumulating it, experiencing it, or integrating it? What a great question.
Wow, that's a good question.
You want to take it, or I do?
Well, we can both go at it. Say it again.
What is the true value of knowledge? Accumulating it, experiencing it, or integrating it? Let me just go with, I will follow on my previous thought because I'm really into this now. For me, knowledge is the source of transformation. Transformation means literally accessing higher layers of knowledge, right? Now, accessing a higher layer of knowledge means there's an intellectual understanding, but if you don't integrate it, it's useless. I mean, how many people believe here that consciousness is something that exists beyond your brains? A few. Okay. Okay.
Majority.
So
That's
how
impressive.
how many of those who raise their hands would not be scared if they were told that tomorrow they're gonna die? Okay.
Wow.
So still, they're quite consistent. So my point is that, and if you intellectually believe something, that doesn't mean you have integrated it and you really, that knowledge is there, is
Right.
somewhere, but it's not really solid
Right.
there.
Right.
So integration is fundamental. experiencing it is fundamental for integrating it. So that's why people who experience near-death experiences, maybe they believe things, but when they have a near-death experience, they say, okay, now I don't fear death anymore, right? And accumulating it is, I mean, I wouldn't say, I mean, forgetting it is not so good. So I would say the purpose is not to accumulate it, is, I guess, having it. The purpose is not to accumulate it. The purpose is to continue all the time accessing higher and higher layers of knowledge, getting closer to truth, closer to truth. That's the goal to me. The more you do that, every step you take in that direction, the more transformative your path becomes. But again, you need to integrate everything.
Yeah, it's critical. I agree. I agree with everything you said, and you know, I think integrating it is critical, and that's usually the part that's missing. Meaning, you know, what do we mean by integrating it? We mean like it has to become a habit. You know, I had this thing when I, you know, when I gave up the ski industry and I got into my van and I did like 5 years of intense research, isolated in the mountains or in the high deserts. And you know, I had many moments. And so since I was completely isolated, I was only with my thoughts. And when I was with my thoughts, I was so tuned in to what I was thinking because I had really nothing else to do other than studying. I was struck with how many thoughts I have that are destructive, right? How many self-destructive thoughts I had. It started first thing in the morning, looking at the mirror in my little van going, oh shit, you look like shit, you know. And then like, oh, you know, like, and then it's just like, oh man, like how am I gonna get, you know, money to, you know, and whatever, you know, like just like continuous negative, like this wheel that's constantly going. And then I noticed that when I was crossing people in the street and when I was, you know, going around, that I was picking up things, you know, like this is like, and then I'm thinking, okay, so I gotta start editing. And so I made in my mind's eye, I made this black book. I called it my black book. And in the black book, every time I would monitor, the black book was in charge of monitoring my thoughts. And every time I would have a self-destructive thought or a thought that was not like producing, you know, positive results in my life, it would go in the black book and it had to be canceled. So I would say XXX was my thing. So I would say XXX. And when I had my children, you know, my children would like, you know, because I did it for years, you know, and I would say it out loud, you know, under my breath, but I would still say it out loud, and my kids were like, "You're so weird," and like, you know, "I don't know who you are. Don't come close to my friends." And then, and so, but you know, this thing, and then I realized, you know, and more I did it, more it went away. But it was a constant maintenance of like, what are you, is this thing running on automatic, you know, and how much am I, and so like having like really deep moment of like cognition and transformation, if and then going back to the windmill, you know, that's constantly producing. It is not integration. In order to integrate, I got to continue to refer back to that feeling, to that thought, to that understanding that came, and that, you know, and so that I can continue to like integrate it and bring it into my life, like in everything I do, you know, and so that's as well editing your actions. So I, you know, so that my actions are commiserate with my thoughts and my word, and so that everything is in agreement, right? And that takes that's what I meant by focus. Like, it takes a lot of focus and monitoring and, you know, not just running on automatic.
Exactly. Wow, I think we're running out of time.
Oh.
I could be talking to you forever.
Yes.
We should do this every week.
Yeah, let's do. That would be wonderful.
Unfortunately, we don't have any more time, but I wanted to thank you for what you do. Mireia was talking about, I was referring to me as a philanthropist. Look, to me, philanthropy, actually the word philanthropy means etymologically love for humanity. And I think you're a philanthropist too. Everybody who does something out of love for humanity, it doesn't matter if you do it with money or you do it with your knowledge. Donating your knowledge to humanity is an incredible act of love. So I just wanted to say thanks for being one of the greatest philanthropists in the world.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Thank you very much. Imagine if we lived in a world where everybody's a philanthropist. I think one of the experiments that's interesting with Burning Man is the, you know, money-free environment that it produces, and then everybody is there to gift, you know, the gift approach. And I think it really, like, it's remarkable. I think that's what thing that attracts people to this kind of festivals.
Great.
And I think we could do that all the time. And if we did, we would live in a remarkable world. And I wanted to finish, you know, to let people know this great transformative both technology and knowledge that's emerging in the world, and it's really exciting. And there's great hope. Like, do not get discouraged by the 5 o'clock news. There's great transformation occurring. There's so many people, like, look at the conference on consciousness this week, like great scientists, great physicists there, and like Nobel Prize winners, you know, and so there's so much interest, there's so much transformation that's happening. It's really powerful, and it's not ungrounded. It can all be grounded into very good science and transformative knowledge that I think is going to transform our world dramatically in the next few years.
Amen. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Thank you. Appreciate it. Thank you.